Okay, hello everybody. Thanks so much for joining. If you're watching us live or if you're watching us on YouTube, then hope you enjoy the next half an hour. I'm Joshua Ryan Sahar. I'm the director of Traveltech Scotland, which is part of Edinburgh's Futures Institute, and this is our fourth in the series of future travel narrative discussions. And I'm absolutely delighted to have my friend Matt Hairsnape, the CEO from Triend, joining me. Matt, do you want to do a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, thank you. My name's Matt. I've been in the travel industry for just over a decade now. Probably the first thing I went into, actually. And now we run a company called Triend, and essentially it's a decentralized and customizable review and feedback solution. So we used Web3 technology to offer a new value proposition for customers and businesses. But it's much more detailed and fun than that, but I'm sure we'll go into that side of it now, Josh.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I mean, we've had lots of conversations about this, so I thought it couldn't be a better person to have a filmed conversation. Although we might find out that people enjoy our conversations less than we are enjoying our conversations.
Yeah.
We'll see. So just to give a quick recap to anyone who's watching, what we've been doing over the last few weeks is we've been releasing a future travel narrative or story, all that have come from our workshops. So over the last few years, Edinburgh Futures Institute, we've been running future travel workshops with people in the industry, either tech experts, travel or tourism experts. And then at the end, we usually come out of these sort of rich, interesting narratives about an envisaged future of travel. And then what we did is we got some fantastic illustrators. I'm just going to quickly show the illustration for this story, which is Work-Cation. And we got illustrators to draw them. We got a fantastic copywriter, Maura Ryan, to write up these stories. And then what we wanted to do was have conversations to really interrogate them. You know, what is it about this future that might be realistic? What might not be? What does it mean for the future of technology? What technology do we have now that might achieve this future? Or what might we need to develop? So what I do at this stage is I give a very brief overview of what the story is about, and then I start peppering our guest with questions. So this story, Work-Cation, I'm going to show the illustration again just as I talk through it. Work-Cation starts with Janice, who lives in Berlin, who enjoys the summer but enjoys slightly less the cool winter. Their company that she works for has started to, post-pandemic, started to think about, well, how do we change as a business to sort of accommodate this new remote work environment? So they do a couple of things. One is they allow more flexibility with their staff, but the other is they start actually converting space, their old office space, into new accommodation in various different parts of the world. So, you know, they had all these distributed offices, they turn it into accommodation that actually their staff can then navigate. So she decides, Berlin no longer for me. Instead, I'm going to sort of go around the different regions of Europe and work from there. And I think the bit that we're probably going to focus on in the conversation is almost like how that works. So she really enjoys it. She sort of has dinner with colleagues, experiences a whole range of different things. But the key thing is how she uses almost like a blockchain enabled technology to allow for swifter movement between countries, being able to have some sort of ability to seamlessly navigate the different tax and bureaucratic arrangements. So she can be in Catalonia at one point, in Italy the next, Switzerland the next, without it being too complex. I think, and that is all about how she shares her identity across multiple points. And at the end, she's very happy traveling around Europe, working in multiple ways. Now, I recommend you read the story. It's been beautifully written, and you can tell that it comes from a particular time, around 2022, 2021, just after a pandemic, and digital nomadism was growing. So I'll leave it there. I think the first question I have for you, Matt, is basically what are your impressions on that story? What stood out for you in the Work-Cation narrative? And are there elements that you think are particularly interesting, exciting, or concerning about this potential future?
Yeah, I think it's a future that's happening fast, right? And and that's mainly due to a lot of different reasons, including the pandemic. that the work-cation narrative has just become such a natural thing, right? Think about, we're probably a bit older, 10, 15 years ago, going working 6 months, 7 months away, and keeping your same job wasn't allowed in the same way. So you had to make these really, decisive decisions. And what did you want in life? Did you want the kind of the lifestyle and the happiness living on the beach, or did you want to stay as a top C-level? And now we've kind of had this opportunity to kind of have both. It's kind of made this like really, mixing pot of, what does that mean? Okay, so I can keep my C-level job, but I can be on the beach, but I want to be able to still have my important work meetings. I need to be on time. I need to have good internet connection. Exactly like you said, I need to travel around, but back home, I was really I'm a really big, important advocate for sustainability. How do I keep that in terms of my motives of keep traveling? And I think it's one of those parts of it. And I think the travel industry in whole is now really going, okay, we need to cater for a new market and cater for that fast. Digital nomads is one of the fast and rising communities in the world. So it's not a small bunch of 10 mates traveling around. It's huge. And it's really, adopting and keeping up to date with, the macro side of, okay, we can discuss looking at, okay, I don't trust things as much, or how do I have my own data protection? But also on the smaller side of how can I just live my everyday and it still stay the same?
So it sounds like you quite like the idea of this sort of future potentially that allows for more fluidity, that experts, whatever industry you're in, could potentially have more fluidity around where they work, where they live, and being able to do that in a more seamless way.
Who wouldn't, right? It's like saying, who wouldn't want to go and walk on a plane and not have to sit through passport control for 7 hours? Or, who wouldn't like to keep the same salary that they're on, but on a beach where they can have that work-life balance? And I think that whole, I'd say the word balance is the biggest thing, right? You sit down and talk to my dad, there's no balance, right? You work and you get paid and you don't enjoy life and you do it. But now, becoming, generations are changing and going, actually, I do like to be happy with what I do, but I don't need to just be here. I want to experience culture. I want to experience life. I want things a bit more personalized for me. It doesn't mean I only want the 5-star hotel or the 2-star hotel. I want, something maybe that is more experiential. And I find that fascinating because that's, changing a lot of the travel industry as we know it for that kind of personalized element. And who doesn't want things more personalized to them? Get better experience.
Absolutely. I think, you mentioned about it's like being a fast growing movement. I think a year, maybe 2 years ago, it was really hot. Like everyone was talking about it. But then there's been infrastructure that's been around for a long time, like Nomad List, and there's all these different places that digital nomads go. But as you've said, it's still growing, it's getting bigger. And I think as it's grown, we've seen in the press, there's been articles about some of the challenges of doing it. So some of the companies have been like, I know that I've seen companies that have got policies saying, oh, you can only work this amount of time outside. There's things like tax implications, and what the sort of the hopping that happens in this story feels still slightly unobtainable, perhaps. But what do you think are perhaps some of the technical barriers to it at the moment? I know that you work from loads of different places, but what do you think are some of the technical barriers, and where do you think some of the technical opportunities may be? And definitely draw upon some of your experience setting up Triend there, because I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
I think the idea of for those who don't, when I was talking at the beginning, kind of a Web3, the new era of what is classified as the next internet, right? And that's the whole point of having this new sense of ownership, things not being held in the same way, where your data's not being taken in one siloed area or companies taking it, and you have that real ownership of your information, of your passions, of your love. And I think when you store that all together, it becomes your identity, right? So that for me is the real exciting way that you have that packaged up. It's in the form of technology, however you've been looking at blockchain, but it's able to be passed out to who you want on your control, on how you want things to be put out there. And that digital kind of identity is really exciting, because that, you know, it's endless in terms of the possibilities of what your digital identity could mean, in terms of the experience you could get delivered. As simple as, you know, I share that I love, you know, I've personalized reviews on, you know, my love for gin and tonics. I arrive at a hotel and I sit down, I've got a gin and tonic waiting for me. You know, that, you know, little things that your identity could hold is really exciting for me.
Yeah, and that's really interesting example, because I've, you know, when we talk about personalization and anticipating traveler or visitor needs, sometimes it can get into the realm of creepy, right? It's like they know that much about me and they've already prepared something. Whereas different in the way that you described it there, which is I have some sort of control over what my identity through data is, and I also have control about who I release it to and what I release. And I guess that is this idea potentially in Web3.
Yeah, and exactly, and it goes into so many different brackets and so many different value propositions. It could be that you're, you know, like where we work in reviews, it could be that your review was taken down, you know, the fact that it was held in a centralized location. It could be the fact that, you know, things are manipulated by the businesses, and, you know, and you want it to be more immutable. And, you know, and that ownership part of it, right? When you're writing something or giving your information or sharing your passport details, you know, you don't know where that's going or where that's being sent, you know, and people are a lot more, you know, attuned to their data being sold these days, you know, but they were, you know, 15 years ago. So that's become a really kind of a bit of a scary point, especially for younger generations. So having this new kind of, you know, this technology which offers these really important value propositions, you know, a decentralized digital ledger that, you know, records these transactions, that helps with these points. It's exciting. And for those, you know, who, when you look at blockchain and you talk about, you know, it's a scary word, right? Everyone would have heard of Bitcoin. Everyone will have seen art as NFTs. And everyone will kind of see these run really buzzy things around it, but, you know, don't build trust. I'm sitting there, and a lot of people sit there and go, yeah, blockchain with technology, you know, it builds trust. But it does. It's just the foundation of how this is being used to date. But the points of how it can be used are really exciting. For example, tokenization. You have your flight ticket tokenized, and it's ownership, it's yours. You know, Josh is heading to ITB and he's going to Berlin, and he last minute, when the kid's sick, I can't make it. What do? You know, lose the flight, or do you have the ownership as your flight as an asset that you could say, for example, put on a secondary market? And then because you've now sold that, you can literally, you don't lose that flight, you don't lose that money, you don't have to go through the refund process. It's quick fire, it's exciting, and that opens a lot of, you know, possibilities. You know, and the same for us working in reviews. It goes back to those core points I said. You know, trust. You know, how do I know this person reviewed this? You know, how do I know that there's a transaction that relates to this review? You know, fake information is becoming more and more scary, especially with, you know, when you place, you know, the next, you know, technological, you know, revolution next to that, which is AI, which has so many benefits but so many negatives and weights against it. So blockchain can really help that with the kind of accountability and the transparency. Look at travel companies that really want to say, you know, look what we're doing, you know, in terms of our eco-sustainable initiatives, right? But, you know, blockchain, by having that kind of these records, it can hold them accountable. So it can really make these, you know, businesses show to their customers, and customers trust more. And I think there's that kind of beautiful kind of like connected ecosystem that can value everyone if it's used in the right way, but if it's also understood in the right way. You know, you don't want it to be, you know, I'm, you know, annoyed at myself for saying Web3 when I jumped on this call, right? You don't want it to be Web3. You don't want to talk about Web2. You don't want to talk about Web1. You just want it to offer a better value proposition than travel is offering now. Have that value, and then it just, you know, as you said at the beginning, it just helps your journey better, more seamless, more personalized, and safer. You know, the safer of your identity, safe, you know, of where that's going, and having that security and lots of things combined like that, really.
Yeah, it's I have a slide when I remember talking about AI, and it always has Triend's logo on it, because I think it's such an interesting.
Nice.
I might even show that up on the screen now. There we are, but just in the top right, which I think which says AI and then like colon a blockchain opportunity. And I always think about what you're doing at Triend with the ability to very rapidly create information. We already knew there was incentive for fake reviews before, and so you need a new way. And but you right what you said about Web3 and blockchain, we don't talk about it like that. Actually think about it as the benefit it gives to the customer. And I think if AI is creating potentially untold amount of new information that might not be or could be trusted, there's already incentive for fake reviews or misinformation, then if you can utilize new technology that allows for better trust or validation or tracking where something has come from, then that is an opportunity. That's trying to solve a problem created by another area of technology. And I think that's what I always really like about what you're doing, but also about this whole new field of Web3 enabled validation, I guess. And so in this story, there's a couple of areas where I think it kind of comes to fruition. One is around this idea of crossing borders a lot and being able to keep all your identity, sort of sovereign identity, all this sort of stuff in one place, and that you're able to, and I think it probably uses an element of AI. It says that to negotiate the different bureaucratic hurdles that you have as you move from country to country. So if you've got all your forms filled out naturally, you can do that super quick. It can validate your identity to the government agency. Now that seems really cool. That'd be amazing. And I think we all have stood in lines long enough at airports to know that'd be great. The other one, which I think is particularly interesting, I'd love to chat to you about, is sustainability credentials. So the company that Janice works for in the story, they've allowed you to work from anywhere, but they also want to minimize sustainability. And so my question to you is on both of those things. But first on sustainability, what do you think needs to happen around digital nomadism and sustainability? And where do you see technology potentially adding some sort of benefit? What are you doing in this space as well?
I think you've got, the big macro ones, right? That everyone will hear, the carbon offsetting. How are we, the big things that are happening, right? But I think the on the smaller side, but the everyday is education. I had a meeting with someone the other week about this, and who was doing a PhD in sustainability, and I was just saying the honest truth is education. All these smaller hotels and then you've got your corporate social responsibility directive, you've got your ESG, and then you've got your something. Someone said one new one to me the other day, and I'm going, well, it needs to be clear and complex, not complex. And I think technology can also help with this, with AI. We've been working on a project for a while which can essentially say, okay, it can list out questions based on ratings on your plastic intake, how much plastic have you got in your hotel, or what are people saying about your actual sustainability directive, but actually giving AI driven suggestions on how to improve based off that, to actually help people who don't have the same education. And I think there's a lot of exciting things around that, and also understanding okay, going back to carbon offsetting, like what are you actually how much are you producing, because there's a lot of things coming out like that. I think there's a lot of apps, these kind of understanding of your carbon tracking, I think, but for us, my biggest one, and I think it really is not shouted enough about, and it's the one I'm personally really passionate about for Triend, is the greenwashing. It's the really not being able to edit what people are saying about you to look better when it comes to sustainable values or causes, or what you're trying to do to be better. It's saying, yes, I wasn't rated that well in sustainability, but I'm going to do XXXXX to improve. Okay, next month, XXXXX, I improve. And I think because the people that they really see it as a bottom line thing when it comes to sustainability. Okay, we need to improve because 70% of travelers now will pay more money to stay in a sustainable place. We need to do it for that reason. that reason there's not to manipulate the data. Why wouldn't you? For a lot of people that don't care and they just care about the bottom line. So I think just being able to prevent greenwashing, which relates back to blockchain, and having that accountability, that transparency, I think is a really kind of exciting route.
Yeah, it's actually not in this story, but in some of our stories that will come after this, which we're going to release. They became like, for some of them, dwelled upon this idea of almost like gamification between individuals or groups about how sustainable you are in your travel, and like almost sort of like monitoring systems. Some got quite dystopian, admittedly, but if you can't at the moment, I think it's really difficult to validate or understand your own carbon impact when you're traveling. I think you've got a good sense of where you've gone, but you don't really know how sustainable you've been. And I think if anything around individual behavior change, you kind of always need that feedback loop to come back to you, right?
Yeah.
And there's a great friend of mine, Havard, he's based in Norway, and he's got a company called Transparency.io, I think. And what he said was, these green credentials, so you get a stamp, one stamp, because you've done one review. It's like one point in time. And, what do you do the day after you get your stamp? You could get rid of all of your like green credentials, but you still got the badge. And what I really like about what you talk about and what Havard talks about with transparency is like, how do you maintain that conversation? How do you keep validating your own green credentials? Because it's not a one-off hit. It's something you have to keep on doing.
I think it goes back into exactly like you're saying, and I think gamification is a really exciting part in sustainability, because people, look at like the Stravas, for example, like people exercising, doing things better. They want to be a part of it. They want to challenge their mates, and if you can bring kind of sustainability into that bracket. And I think because, it's got that real kind of two lines, the people who are really, really sustainable focused, they really have a strong understanding. Their company may be B Corp incorporated, and then the other person doesn't know so much. So it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning when we started talking about sustainability. I think a big part of it comes to education. And it's and gamification can help with education. I was watching a TV program yesterday when they were talking about how popular mobile gaming is in Africa, and how gamification is really used for education. And I think for everyone, someone who brings out that next app, which is going to really help each other to play, and the rewards are actually real value utility. So and then once again going back to the interconnectedness. So it's not just every time I go and do something sustainable at the Hilton, I might not stay at the Hilton, okay, it's been a bad month. I'm going to go and stay in this hostel down the road. But if it's not connected, that value proposition dies. So it's trying to find the way it's interconnected. Like you're saying, it keeps you wanting to come back to more, and it keeps you wanting to kind of improve and share your experiences for the good and the bad. And on the businesses side, it has to come down to that I'm ready to open my doors. Okay, I might not have the highest rating in sustainability, but I'm prepared to try harder, and I'm prepared to build this. I'm prepared to interject AI to tell me what to do, rather than not wanting the door. We had a big conversation with some of our trend advisors saying, okay, we want to put a sustainable badge with ratings on our review widget, which businesses can have in. And it was such a divided conversation, because then people start going, well, and it was the same for inclusivity. And then they said, well, if someone's rated at 42 and then it's on their site, they're not going to put it. And it starts to become a bit of a Black Mirror episode. People could start saying, okay, these guys out, let's go and get the pitchforks out. So it's really trying to find that fair balance, which doesn't discriminate, either, whether the business or the actual, say, reviewing and sustainability. It's giving that fair chance on both, or it won't really get that mass adoption in the same way unless you have the education.
And that's a good segue actually onto one of the final questions I've got for you, actually, which is around about the technology that you're developing, the technology that's talked about in this story, this sort of narrative of the future. And I guess transformative innovation in travel, because we know it's a sector that I think is really innovative, but it's been known to be a little bit slower. We know that some of this Web3 blockchain type technology that allows for better validation, the personal wallets to keep your data in a secure way, all this sort of stuff, has started to emerge, but perhaps not as quick as other people think. And so I guess two questions. One is, you're on the cutting edge of this. You're trying to build a company in this space. What are the challenges you're facing and how are you trying to overcome them? And second is, like, how do we get more robust, innovative trials of this sort of technology in the sector?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not an easy space to be in. And I think travel, is notoriously known for not being the most innovative. And there's not that so much, real pushing the boundaries in terms of emerging tech. And especially, in terms of, blockchain and what we're building. But it also brings the exciting part of it, because I think travel is, one of the most exciting spaces to bring in emerging technology such as Web3 and AI. So I think that's, the biggest part is really understanding. And that comes a lot from us and anyone else building in the space, is what we said at the beginning, is not to make it this stigma against the actual, this is a bracketed word. Okay, it scares my business. I don't want to be a part of it. Goodbye. It's talking about the real, fake reviews, for example, huge issue in the travel industry, right? Fake reviews is bad. Do you want more honest, trustworthy, accountable reviews? Well, yeah, okay, well, you don't need to know about our technology, but this is what it delivers, right? And I think it's the same for, you don't need to know about NFTs and tickets, but do you want to resell your flight? Yeah. Okay, well, this does that. And I think that is a really important part. It's been a kind of a struggle, but a really learning curve for us, for the potential, definitely, and going to these conferences. And where do I think it can kind of go to? I think there's not enough support in terms of the travel tech ecosystem for these bigger, riskier moves, which could essentially really help the whole travel industry as a whole. There's a few exciting, people in the space, and I know that especially in Web3 and travel, there's a little community and group that all speak. You've got the guys like Camino that are trying to build a travel specific blockchain, but I think you need that kind of supportive ecosystem. And what does that look like, right? VCs notoriously, look down a bit on travel, trying to kind of get the kind of CVC support. Does it fit in with their everyday, their problems, or exactly what they need right now? So how do you take those risks? And I think, having more of a supportive ecosystem that can not only nurture, but support and kind of work on, the real, this A plus B could really be an exciting C, rather than just the pipeline of, all right, you're going to travel company, okay, all right, you're going to get your pre-seed, your seed, your series A, series B, and then, okay, I think there's a lot more opportunity that could be refined in this space that could help this ecosystem in emerging travel tech. So I hope we can look into that.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said, and that's unsurprising, because we are working together at the moment on very early stages on trying to think about perhaps different, better, new ways to support quite radical travel tech innovation with startups. So if you're watching, keep an eye on our LinkedIn, and if you're going to ITB, we will be there, and you can chat to us about what we're thinking about. I'm quite optimistic about this particular story, and partially because I've chatted to you a lot about this type of thing, which is that I think the problems of fake reviews, of being able to share your identity in that particular way, of having more security of your own data, and the way that AI is changing travel planning, travel itineraries, means that these sort of validation is going to be really required. So I don't know. I like this one. It's a great image as well. But before you go, Matt, is there anything final you want to share for people who are watching? How to get more information about what you're doing at Triend or anything like that?
Yeah. So our company is Triend.io, and and it's really that point when it's speaking to the different stakeholders in travel and saying, is this a real problem to you? And like how we hit it off is, it's really important to kind of discuss these, the problems. Is it a now problem? Do they see it as a future problem? And just going back to finding what you're saying, Josh, it's not just travel as a whole, it's a lot of the macro kind of climate which is going to inform, you know, this story which, you know, we're discussing today. It's about, okay, you know, identity, passports being replaced, you know, fake reviews in terms of AI now. It's so easy to manipulate data. Okay, you know, 20 years, 15 years ago, I didn't really care that, you know, maybe Facebook and all these big, you know, companies were, you know, taking my data and cooking and tracking everything I was doing. But now I don't like that. And how can you kind of build that, you know, what's happening right now in the different sectors, but then take that to give a much more of a seamless, personalized, you know, ownership-driven travel experience.
Yeah, I think that is a good vision to end on. And I've been told by my computer making noises that is also time up. But look, Matt, thanks so much. Just for anyone again, myself and Matt are going to be at ITB next week as this live stream goes out. We want to talk more about how we can help radical innovation in travel as well. Thank you so much. If you want to read the narrative, you can read it at traveltech.scot. And next week we'll have our fifth live stream about our fifth narrative, which we're going to launch tomorrow. So thanks so much, Matt, and we'll look forward to our next live stream.
Thanks for having me, Josh. All right, take care, mate. See you in ITB.